Alright guys, welcome back to this tier list where we will talk about the best decks for the Duelist Cup that is live right now. We have the best deck where I will crown one of these decks as the best for the Duelist Cup. Then we have top decks, we have mid decks, and we have don't decks, which just means better do not play it in comparison to the other ones. It's important here to mention that I have thinned them out a bit to only include decks that are like viable. So obviously you could put in way more decks here, but I don't want to put like 1,000 decks and don't play like heroes or Flonderies, where it's kind of obvious that these decks are just not great. So this is already a list of very good decks for the Duelist Cup or for Master Duel at the moment in general. So this is how we are doing it. By the way, keep in mind with the Duelist Cup, as always, with any event, that there will be additional missions added to the Duelist Cup in around about a week, where you can then maximize your efficiency when it comes to getting the gems. But now, without further ado, let's start right here. We have a branded, and obviously you can also play branded with Mitsurogi. You could also play branded with a little Draco package, and I think depending on what you do there, it differs whether this is whether this deck is good or not. At the moment, I'm honestly going to put this at the mid category. I think there are just better decks here that I will show you. And once again, keep in mind that even the don't decks that I will put in don't are better than most decks that you can play in Master Duel, but still can't really compare to the best decks that we will crown. I'm assuming branded is here somewhere in the middle. I think if you combine branded with a little Draco engine, it could be at the bottom of the top deck category. We will see, but we will also have to see where this fits in the mid category, because obviously the Draco tail stuff, no big surprise, is very, very strong. We have Centurion, which I also think is kind of like a mid deck. Would definitely not play this over branded. Maybe this will end up in the don't category in the end. We will have to see. It's still kind of nice, kind of strong, can establish a very good end board. Is sometimes pretty hard to interrupt because your Ash Blossoms, your Imperms sometimes don't really work on the deck, or they can play through these interruptions, and once they can establish the Cosmic Blazer Dragon, it's kind of game over for them, unfortunately, and that is why this can't be placed any higher. This is not great going second into a board, so this does not really work that great. Maybe this is also something for the don't category. We will have to redefine this a bit later on. We have Sky Striker, which honestly I think at the moment is one of the top decks, also pretty much a sleeper deck that can now go first, can go second, and if it wants to go second, it kind of always can go second, because there are not a lot of other decks that really want to go second. But then once again, if it needs to go first, it can go first, and some builds are designed to go first. This will also get cool support in the future when the Radiant Typhoon stuff comes. Pretty strong Sky Striker right now, and it can break a lot of different boards. It's also good against Draco Tail, which is obviously right now the newest and one of the best decks. Obviously no big surprise here, but can definitely break it because it has so many ways of dodging the Draco Tail traps via the droplets, via sending stuff away, via the Sky Striker linkage. Just a very powerful one at the moment. Basically capable of breaking nearly any board. Also, a full power Melis board can be broken by Sky Striker, which is why I think this is definitely one of the top decks. We have Tearlaments, which is always kind of around, and obviously you can combine this with Draco Tail, you can combine this with, I don't know, branded, with a lot of different stuff, and it's pretty hard to call Tearlaments a don't play deck, but I think it has to be somewhere here. It's still kind of good, don't get me wrong right here. If you can high roll with this deck, it's still pretty strong, but your ability to play on your opponent's turn is not that great anymore. Obviously with Halfness being at 1, it just needs a bit more to be as powerful as it can be, but I think the randomness factor is just not that great. Also Bestials, which are in the meta right now, are not great for the deck, so I think it's not just Tearlaments time, but you could still take it and play it in the Duelist Cup over a lot of other decks. Then this is one of my sleeper picks, honestly. I think that if you can play Memento, if you're good with the deck, then it's a pretty strong one still. Can break nearly any board, can establish a very layered and strong board where a lot of the interruptions are still in the graveyard and you can re-establish them, and you have interruptions via your spell trap zone. You have it's very layered. You have interruptions via adding your mace, I think it's called, to the hand, and then stealing one of your opponent's bodies. It's also very diverse, right? So you can steal a body, you can pop something, you can, what else can you do? You can negate Spell Trap with the Herald of the it's called Mirage Light or something. So a very good, layer of interruptions. Plus, this is obviously weak into Mech C, but against the Fuwa losses, for example, which Mulch Army Fuwa loss is obviously the most important one, it's not that bad because you don't need to summon from the deck a lot. And as always, if a deck is good against Fuwa, it's obviously great, or obviously good against Mech C, which is why I also think that Labyrinth is still kind of nice. I would put this here in the mid category. Has the problem of going second, obviously, like a lot of trap decks, but if it can go first, it's kind of unbeatable, especially if you put in specific traps, maybe hard counter traps. Dimensional Barrier comes to mind, which at the moment is very nice, especially against something like Draco Tail or against the Ryziel stuff, calling XYZ. Very, very strong, but once again, going second, not the greatest. This is where, in comparison, for example, Branded would be way better. I think that Mathmech is still kind of a nice deck, would still put this in the, or at the top of the don't category somewhere here, but still good, don't get me wrong here, because compared with the other decks that we have not mentioned on this list, it's definitely better. Can make a very strong board, also breaking the board. It's in an okay point, obviously. Cybers wise, Melis is the better deck, no big surprise here, but I still think this is kind of nice. For Temper Dragons, I would not really play this deck right now, because I think even though it still can perform, you have the problem of the deck being too hit, and you will often have hands, and this was already before they established even more hits to the deck, where you just don't get your Tenpai stuff running, and obviously that's a problem, because this is what you need. You don't always, or you just not only want to see your hand traps, which you can play a lot of in Tenpai, which is nice, but oftentimes you just don't see your Tenpai cards and then can't win the game, which is obviously not great. And then we have top decks here. Definitely Orcust better than Memento, in my opinion. Is it better than Sky Strike? I think Sky Strike at the moment is better, but Orcust super solid. Once again, a very layered end board with a lot of follow-up. The follow-up is also in the graveyard, where it's kind of hard to get rid of it. Obviously, if, for example, your follow-up is in the back row in your spell trap zone, then it's much easier to get rid of it when your opponent tries to break your board. But all of the stuff being in the graveyard and then having the Barbel to also activate it on the opponent's turn is just extremely strong. Also, going second, playing into a board, it can be nice, especially if you combine this with the Mitsurogi stuff. When talking about whether this variant, the pure variant, or the Mitsu variant is better, you can definitely make an argument for both. I personally think that the Mitsu variant is a bit better, because it gives you this board breaking ability with the Amino Murakumo, Orcust, extremely strong choice. We have Blue-Eyes, which I think is kind of mid option here. I would honestly pick it over Labyrinth. I think Blue-Eyes is just solid. It can produce nice going first board, can also produce a pretty unbreakable going first board if you can establish a Cosmic Blazer Dragon and this other monster negate dragon, so the 2 level 12 synchros on your turn, which you can if you kind of go in uninterrupted. And then you also have the recursion plays with the drill beam, so if it gets to a grind game situation, this deck is very strong. The only problem is going second, it's not that great, but you have slots for a lot of hand traps where you can use them to stop your opponent, thereby creating kind of like a half board on your opponent's side, and then being able to play into it. It's so cool that Blue-Eyes is just a viable deck. I really like it. This here would be the Onomat Ryziel deck. Obviously, we also have like a pure Ryziel variant, or maybe we call this the Mitsu Ryziel variant. We will see, but this is the Onomat Ryziel variant, which I think is the strongest Ryziel variant. I would put this over Sky Striker. I mean, we still have the ability to create a lot of rank 4 bodies. This also can play some pretty awesome or pretty dirty stuff like the Protoss or like Harpy's Featherstorm. This engine gives Ryziel just the boost that it needs after the limitations to Ryziel, because with the Ryziel limitations, which is why we can quickly talk about this, pure Ryziel is not the greatest. I would still put it at the top of the mid category, but you definitely have a problem because a lot of the Ryziel cards are already hit, which is where the ornament stuff comes in. It's great. It supplements Ryziel perfectly, creates a lot of bodies that you can use for your rank 4 XYZ plays, and you have the entire toolbox available to you. You have the Extinction Knight that can blow up the entire board. You have your Gallant Granite, which can search a Nibiru on top of your board. Just extremely strong still, and isn't really affected by one of the biggest enemies of this deck, which is Dimensional Barrier. But because we are in this best of 1 format, we are also in the best of 1 format for the Duelist Cup. Obviously, it's not the biggest problem. That's how I said Labyrinth could, for example, be a very nice deck where you could, in theory, use the Dimensional Barrier even on your opponent's first turn, so playing on turn 0, basically. So that's kind of nice. We have the new Odeon Temple of the King Staff, also a trap deck. It has, again, the problems of going second, but sometimes you can actually play going second with a trap deck where you just set the cards in the spell trap zone, then when you get your turn and pass over once again, if your opponent has not a lot of spell trap destruction, then this can also work. Odeon, I think, is also very strong. I would not put this in top decks, honestly, but somewhere here at the top of the mid category. I think it's better than a Labyrinth is at the moment, but they are not that far away, honestly. A really cool pick. If you go first, you normally will win the game, but yeah, otherwise can be tough going second, obviously, like with any trap deck. We have Draco here, which obviously I have to firstly put this at the top of the top decks category, the newest one. I think this is super strong, can break the board pretty effectively, can play on the opponent's turn, and has also a very strong turn going first, has good recursion, can play the grind game and also win the grind game, especially with the Arthalion bouncing stuff back to the hand. So yeah, Draco all around is super solid. All the variants, I think the Draco branded variant is the best one. The Magistus variant also is pretty good and has a better ability to play the lock that you can make with the Link one from Blue-Eyes. Yeah, Draco is very strong at the moment. We have Gem Knight, which I also think is one of the top decks. I'm not quite sure whether I would put it over Sky Striker. I think at the moment Sky Striker is just more flexible than Gem Knight, especially now after losing their going first way of floodgating the opponent via this fairy monster. I'm blanking on the name, but it got forbidden, so this does not work any longer. It's not the biggest problem because you will rarely ever go first. Once again, as I said, there are not a lot of going second decks in the meta. Tenpai maybe would be one. Sky Striker, a lot of variants actually run a going first variant right now, so you will most likely go a second quite often with Gem Knight. Not a lot of people are on Gem Knight, so that also means not a lot of people do understand how this deck plays and where to interrupt it. So if you have Gem Knight, I think this is still very powerful. We have a Lunar Light, which I also have to place in the top deck category. Not quite sure whether I want to put it over the Gem Knight or under the Gem Knight. I think I want to put it under Orchest, honestly. I was expecting this to make a bigger hit, but now with Draco also being here and the ability to, and obviously you will see a lot of Draco right, and the ability to play on the Lunar Knight's first turn, which is very important to stop their combo. Obviously, if you can stab the Liger Dancer, then it's kind of over. Then you would need to be like Mitsurogi, for example, where you have this inbuilt kaiju that you can use to out the Liger Dancer. Obviously, if this deck can go first, establish this boss monster, then it normally wins, but every deck wants to go first right now, and yeah, going second, this deck just isn't that great. You have to draw the heavy polymerization then, but still, Lunar Knight, a really good deck, but a lot of hand traps can be run in these top decks where they have the ability to stop this. Against Sky Striker, for example, this can be nice, because Sky Striker, if they not play their own kaiju, which they can't really break the Lunar Light board once it gets established, and they normally play breakers and not hand traps, right? We have Mitsurogi here, which is also one of the top decks, and I will put it, I would put it under Ryziel Onomat here. We are talking here pure Mitsurogi, of course. I've talked about already about this Orchest variant that you can also play. You could play it in Branded, which I think makes Branded a bit better. I would still place it in the same category, though. Does not make the biggest difference. Once again, if we are talking Branded with Draco, then I would put it higher in the top decks category. Otherwise, this stays here. But yeah, Mitsurogi, just super strong. The engine is unhit and will most likely stay unhit for a while. A crazy deck that has the one of the most one of the most crazy boss monsters in the Murakumo. It creates so much follow-up. It has the Futsu, the big dinosaur, which basically says your opponent cannot win the game because the big dinosaur will always summon new monsters from the graveyard. So it basically can do everything that a good meta deck wants to do. Strong going first, strong going second, because you have the Raigeki effect of the Murakumo, of the Amino, and then also you have the ability to generate a lot of follow-up and to pretty hardly be killed when the opponent plays into your board. So it just has everything that a good Yu-Gi-Oh deck needs. And you can think about this, every Yu-Gi-Oh deck that is good has these capabilities that I just mentioned to some extent. We see this with Draco Tail. They can play into a board very, very effectively. They make a good going first board. They have good follow-up. It's like the same with all the good Masaru decks. The next one being Melis, also one of these decks that I just mentioned. I think this is still a bit better than is the Mitsurogi stuff here. Once again, you can make an insane going first board. Going second, this might be one of the weakest ones from all of these up top here, but still you can in theory win. But going first, this is so powerful. Might still make the strongest going first board. Even with the hit to the red ransom, this deck is still pretty good. Now is definitely weaker to a lot of hand traps, but you have to definitely have this on your radar when playing in the Duelist Cup. And yeah, this will just be a deck that is around for a while if they don't hit it anymore, and it's just, the engine is just so powerful that it kind of works. Then we have Art Mage here, which is this newer Art Mage card that I used here as the thing here basically. I think this is honestly a don't deck. It's not a bad deck, but I would play something like Mathmech before I would play something like Art Mage. This deck unfortunately has a lot of weaknesses. If you want to know how to play the deck, by the way, or any of the new decks, I have combo guides for all of these decks up on my channel. And the last one we have right here is White Forest. I also think this is one of the top decks, but would definitely place it a bit lower here. Maybe I would place this over Lunar Light. Obviously going first, if you get uninterrupted, then you make a board that is kind of unbreakable. Now with the new White Forest stuff, you also have the option to just go for the Diabellstar Vengeance and have basically 2 interruptions that would only cost you 1 summon into MXC, which is really powerful. Going second, breaking the board, it's okay, especially with the Diabellstar Vengeance now, the Diabellstar Vengeance and the Filia Diabell, making this deck way better. And now we kind of have to crown one deck as the best deck of them all, and I think it's no big surprise here, at least this is my opinion. Maybe you could make an argument for one of these 3 being up there, but I think that Draco Tail, especially branded Draco Tail, is the deck to beat at the moment. It's unhit, it's complete, it's so powerful going second. Going first, you will see this a lot. You could tag in Retaliating Sea, obviously, if you see a lot of Draco Tail running around, but I think this is the tier list for the Duelist Cup. Play these decks if you want to be successful, and once again, even these don't decks are obviously strong, just the weakest of the strongest ones, so to say. But now I'm very interested in your opinion. Let me know what you think of my tier list. Where would you place what? If you like my videos, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell. And guys, we will see each other in the next one.